Ref, next time.
Right, on to the favourite stuff, which is mowing. So this is a very big report, the one on parks and maintenance, and it has some incredible detail, especially at the ward level. So that will be of interest to all ward members. The pages I think that are very interesting. So if you go to page 91 and 92, what it shows is where the spikes in maintenance requests come from. And primarily these are weather related, and obviously we deal with weather related stuff in a whole bunch of different areas, but clearly last year we had a lot of rain in spring, and it caught the contractors by surprise. And then basically the grass all over the city grows like crazy. Everyone calls up and says, well, we can't play cricket here. And so your request spike goes up. And then there's a period where the mowers get onto it and get round and mow. So that if you look at the charts, it shows you very, very clearly what is going on. So that's really good information. Another piece is also the parks maintenance, and this is where the budget increase for park rangers has come in. So if you go to page 95, it shows you that mowing is really the big one. That's when people get on the phones. Parks maintenance is also another issue as well. And on page 97, there's a very good graph of the parks maintenance related customer service request jobs, and you can see we're not clearing a lot of those, and that's what we've just doubled in the annual plan in terms of having sort of more rangers come in. $5, thank you. So that really is a basic resource issue for us. So we've doubled the amount, so hopefully we'll get better response there. Again, page 99. And on page 98, actually, you can see the spike again in October and December in terms of maintenance-related complaints. So they all come in at the same time of year. So basically, it tells our team, but also tells the contractors that they've got to resource up for that period. Another piece of very interesting data, if you go to page 131, we have a dashboard system, which is very interesting, and it really shows how we manage the contracts across the city. This is a really, really detailed piece of information. It shows that in general, actually the trends are pretty good. These people are doing generally a good job. If you take out the spikes because of the rain and our own maintenance issues, but it shows how we actually manage this data. So the fact that we're getting this data now means we can really drill into stuff and really see what's going on. So that's really, pretty exciting if you're a data junkie. I tend to think that, the trends are actually reasonably good if we take out last spring and we take out the fact that we do have to improve our general maintenance, which we're doing with the park rangers. So there you go. Enjoy.
Thank you. So you'd like to move that?
I'll move that, yeah.
And seconded by Andrew. Any discussion? Vicky?
One of the things that came through strongly at the committee was the spring impact across our own staff, but also across all contractors, and that comes through year after year after year. So it doesn't really matter how much it rains, things grow in spring. And what seemed to be the situation was that there was simply not enough staff to be able to deal with it. I wonder if it would be sensible if we asked Andrew at some stage, just for one page, it doesn't need to be major, on what could possibly be done to address that staffing issue.
Yeah, it's a really difficult issue. If you look at, so we had a lot of rain in spring last year. The previous year, actually, the rain came late, so the spike was actually in January.
It was later, but you always get that spike.
Yeah. The issue, this is any kind of seasonal issue, is how do you get a huge amount of staff in for a particular time of the year to do something? Now, here's a good question. The labour force that we do have regularly is the citizens. So, that is potentially an option, is actually just get everyone out there with their mowers. Because to resource up just for, say, 2 months a year is quite tricky for the contractors. Yeah.
Well, I suggested, because Andrew raised it as an issue not just for us, but for contractors, and that they lose their brownie points, as it were, and their whatever it is, the KPIs during that time. And I wonder if we shouldn't address actually how we address that, because that deals with the majority of the complaints. And Andrew's made a wee note, so I'm assuming he's okay with that.
So since we're having a kind of a free fall,
it's a good discussion because it happens every year. Yeah. So how do you deal with it? Is the question.
I just wondered whether, and it's because of a larger conversation that's been going on around immigration policy, but you've got the recognised seasonal workers who actually work at a different time of the year. And maybe we should start because it can't just affect Christchurch, it must be the same in Auckland, Wellington and other major metros around the country. I don't think we would be without wit to think whether there's a way of linking into a workforce that is moving around the country at different times of the year, and whether there literally is an external workforce that could come in and assist at that time.
Yeah, and even students or, retired people. I mean, there is a way of doing that.
Yeah, September
the difficulty is
that's true.
problematic for
But
students.
the difficulty is what you mentioned before, Ref, is the other year it was like 2 months difference. So you've got a workforce ready to go. They're required elsewhere at certain times. So you know it's going to happen, or it may happen, but you don't know when it's going to happen, and that's a real pain.
I was actually looking particularly at addressing it through internships, just by the way.
Yeah, I knew the word intern would come up. Glenn.
Oh yes, it just curious, over a couple of wards there, Hornby has a lot of people, Burwood has a lot of grass, so we've got a lot of spikes over them.
There you go.
First issue, the mowing was there. Is there some red zone influence in there, Andrew, in the Burwood spike over incompleted
No, these are all parts.
scheduled maintenance
Reserves.
Not us.
Yeah, there is a lot of grass and obviously associated to the red zone. Lynn's look after the red zone as such at the moment, but there's a lot of bits and pieces that we have to look after. It's quite difficult land to manage, and there was the contractor's response to looking after that area hasn't been optimal.
Oh, sorry, sound can't pick you up, Andrew, so you want to come up to come to the end of the
We need
table.
a roving microphone.
We just put the roving microphone away. Thank you.
Thanks. Yes, in the Burwood area and in the east, as I was saying, Lynn's are responsible for the red zone at the moment, and there is a lot of grass over there. There's a whole lot of bits and pieces that we are responsible for, and the contractor's response to getting on top of that last spring was less than optimal. It's getting better, but the discussion that there was around how do you manage the resource at the peak time, the way we've actually set the contract up is we've worked with the contractors to ensure that all of the demands don't come on at the same time so that they can release as many people as they can to that high mowing activity. I think the reality is that they haven't planned that well, and a lot of the complaints that got registered were not necessarily because of a whole lot of grass not being managed. As you can see, the mowing's been the spike, but it's really been around how they've managed that resource. They were typically not doing the same sites over and over and over again. They'd go back to the start of their schedule and get as far as they could. So there was some sort of common sense things that need to improve as well. So it's not just that it's uncontrollable. It's fair to say that how the available resource is used needs to improve as well. There's an expectation in our contracts that they will always fail to achieve everything. Hence we have performance measures set at 90% of the agreed program and banding for quality. So I guess from a learning perspective going into this spring, it's going to be a worse spring. It's going to be a harder spring this year, whenever that happens to turn up, because we've already got a lot of moisture in the ground that we didn't have following 3 years of near drought. So there's going to be some challenges coming up this spring.
Are we picking up Crown work, or what is Crown responsibility in that?
In respect to the red zone?
Yeah.
Hopefully not.
Okay.
But not in the
is that
short term,
behind
because
the
we're
spike?
certainly not funded to deal with
No.
the level of service that they've been delivering in that red zone.
Okay, so that's not behind the spike?
No.
in there?
No.
Okay.
David and Dion?
Thank you. Still feeling a bit croaky. I think a soak in some hot salt water pools would have helped me this morning, but not quite there. Andrew, I'm just curious, with the performance management of some of our contracts, and the report that REF's committee's had, we often hear a lot of conversation about some of our contractors losing, as Vicky said, brownie points. Are they being a little unfairly penalised with the spike situation we've got, or are our contractors expected to recognise we have this problem at this time of the year and be able to cope with it?
Oh, it's the latter. I mean, the way the program's set up and the frequencies are set up, they are set up to deal with the spikes. And if nature shifts that spike along, we always work with the contractors to make sure that the frequencies they need to deliver the product are correct. Look, I think they had a bit of a honeymoon in the first year, in the first spring. It wasn't that bad, and they got there quite nicely, and I think it hit them a little bit by surprise. But I think it's been pointed out, that Councillor Buck might have pointed out, this is not new. City Care had the same issues when they were the contractor, whenever the spring came. I guess what I'm trying to say, it wasn't so much that it was a complete failure. I think they just didn't understand quite how to deploy the resource so that they didn't have repeat failures at the same location. Now that's a learning that I would like to think that we can work with them to eradicate going forward. Your question around punishment, we believe that the contract is a really good pain gain contract and that it fairly reflects good performance, and that the community on the other side of the coin, if you like, that if the contractor is not performing year after year after year, well then someone new should be brought to the table. So it's black and white. It's very clear they won't get paid for work they haven't done, and it's challenging for them. The challenge for them is to be really good at resource management. And Councillor Manji pointed out, some contractors do that by holding their staff for the bulk of the year and trying to bring in temp staff for the peaks. It's a very open contract. They can employ subcontractors to manage that peak if they get ready for it. So we think
we can expect this year that the message is out that it is going to be an exceptional growth year. We've been talking to them for a while that as soon as the rain started in late April and May, that they need to be well established to deal with spring. Thank you.
Dion, then Aaron.
Yeah, it's just quickly around the different, you keep talking about product, but the change of product that we've had, and has just that impact, has that been quite, in terms of the education about how to apply the new product that we've been using in terms of being better for the environment, has that had much of an impact?
Oh, so, sorry, in respect to the non-glyphosate approach and the...
And the Roundup and stuff.
Yeah, okay, so removal of Roundup or glyphosate, if you like. Look, there's no evidence that the efficacy of the organic-based product is having a major impact at all. We've increased the frequency that we have to apply it. There's about 3 species that it's not that good at dealing with. We've given the contractors more resource. Council recognised that in the report, that we would have to up the operational expenditure in that space. Council at the time also gave us some extra capital, so we're out there at the moment remulching gardens to make sure that it's a bit more balanced. I'd have to say at this point we're probably another 12 months away from seeing it being quite successful in the park environment. It's challenging in some other environments, and it's challenging for some people in parks because it pongs, frankly. It's quite a nasty smell. It goes away pretty quickly, but we've had a few complaints about the smell. Yeah. We haven't had anyone say they like it.
But has that resource, I mean, where I'm asking is the resource that you had, obviously, when you changed the product, has that been sufficient to be able to drive that through the organisations that are delivering it?
Sorry, when you say through the organisation, are you referring to the contractors? Oh, look, it was a best guess from them. They were given an open opportunity to, they understand how long it takes their people. I mean, our contracts are simple. It's bums on seats of a mower or people doing work. And they understand that, better than we do. And so they were given an open invitation to put to us the case of shifting away from glyphosate to the new product. What is the likely impact to be? And they've still got that opportunity right now. We're reviewing how that's gone. There might be some minor tweaks, but there was certainly, as I said at the beginning, there's no evidence that that is the major contributor to the customers' concerns.
Aaron's next.
Yeah, my question is around how open we are to allowing certain neighbourhoods to manage their own contracts. Have we ever looked at that? We have a residents, it's quite a large, strong residents association in the ward I represent, who have a number of parks and pocket parks and public spaces. They're interested in potentially running it themselves. Are we open to that and saying, hey, look, the square meterage rate per year is this, you've got this much park space, this will be your budget, are you still interested? And can we have those conversations? Because they have really
yes, we have.
Gardens.
Typically, they've come to us over the last while through sports clubs that have an association with a particular park. When we explain to them that, for example, it costs around $1,200 per annum to look after a sports field, they quickly change their mind. And the reason for that is, of course, is the amortisation of all of the equipment and resource across the entire city brings the rate right down. So when you look at the cost on an asset-by-asset basis, it's quite low. And look, we're very open. We're more interested, I guess, in exploring and expanding volunteer input. We did some stuff a couple of weeks ago when this report was requested for, and we sort of calculate that the monetary value of the volunteer hours that we get into parks at the moment is around 1.4 million per annum. So it's not to be sniffed at, and we really want to explore pushing that angle more. So rather than saying, here you go, you manage the contractors, and you have to manage the risk, of course, associated with health and safety, et cetera, and access and so forth, that we encourage the community to get a bit closer to whomever the workforce is and work with them. We believe that's a better mechanism.
Ray?
Such a question, I just wanted to jump in on Dion's question. If you go to page 132, there's an excellent dashboard there, and what it looks at is a particular contract in a particular area, which is the Eastern contract. So we tend to get the headline bits, mowing and sports field safety and parks, but then you can actually drill down into that and see what the particular issues are. So if you look at the bottom one, which is general parks maintenance, year-to-date trend, you know, for playground equipment, hedges, gardens, that's all really good, and then it's the weed control that's getting the issue. So there is incredible data here to actually work out which areas are causing the issues. So, you know, that's really useful stuff.
Pauline?
Just want to comment too, to follow up, that with this incredible data, we can actually become more proactive in how we address these things rather than reactive. And so that's the way that we're trending across the board.
Yeah.
That's a really good thing.
Well, isn't that the theory behind the new park ranger?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, this data is available to both the contractor and council staff, and I think it was pointed out before that it's quite complex to get good information out of our customer service information at the moment, but we can get some, and that's what we want to use to get that proactive management going. And it really just has simply been we've been too stretched, in the past.
Are the contractors sitting down with each community board and going through this data with them?
When the contract was set up, it was a requirement that the contractors present themselves to community boards on a monthly basis. Different community boards responded differently to that. Some of them wanted less frequent updates. I suspect that it's sort of dropped away, but I'll follow up to make sure that we had good response from some community boards, wanted a monthly catch-up, and others said, look, 3 monthly or less is fine. So more than willing to give that a nudge again.
Yeah, I'd really like the data to inform the discussions, you know.
Yes,
So,
yep.
I mean, that Eastern one is a really good example of how you can drill down into the data to see what the real problems actually are. Because it's very easy to say there's a service level miss.
Yes.
But actually to find out what that is focused on and the timing of it.
Yep.
It's all very relevant to any decision making that you'd want to make, or resourcing decisions. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, just on that, I mean, we get updates every month on graffiti, and I think this would be quite good, just in the board area report, to actually have this stuff included. It would be quite good.
Yeah, but to actually sit with the contractor at the board
Yep.
table, community board table. Yeah.
Very good.
Yep. Vicky?
Andrew's sitting there. I wonder if you'd like to just say when the lights are going to happen in the Botanic Garden.
Sorry, could you speak up a little? Sorry.
She wants
Did
to
you
ask
talk-
a completely irrelevant question. We're
Oh, about
to
a certain
rule out
property
order.
not too
About
far from here?
A certain uplighting.
I don't have that
event.
information in front of me at the moment, Councillor.
Yardi.
Thanks, Andrew, and thanks for the information in the report. Are you able just to give us a bit of a time frame for when we'll get an improved customer service interface in terms of the ability to manage the complaints coming in versus the completion work?
Sorry, are you talking about the information system?
Yeah, a number of people, there's a number of complaints that have come in where people have repeatedly lodged complaints,
right,
and things don't happen. So really closing the loop with the customers, I don't like calling them customers, but that's the language we use. But when people make a complaint, having the ability to close that complaint by either saying, we've investigated and it should have been done, or actually we did the work, and, just being able to come back to people in a reasonable time frame within just closing off the request that's been made.
So the people part of it, that's the driver behind that Ranger increase in resources. Face-to-face works, we know face-to-face works better than technology, frankly. The technological part of it, yes, it is. It's a clumsy and cumbersome process for staff, and to be frank, it often gets forgotten because they have to close it out in two separate systems. So I'm not going to promise, a rapid increase in closing out our data. What I am going to promise is we're already thinking and starting about how quickly we can get those rangers out in the field so that our customer interaction improves dramatically.
Yeah, I think the point, and it's been an irritant for me too, sort of right from the get-go of smart SnapSend Solve, is that why can't we have a Solve SnapSend function that returns to the customer? But I think smart cities are looking at whether that project can...
I thought
a new system is on the way, but it's an IT-driven project, and I don't have the
that's cool. Okay. And just, you did mention about the 3 new rangers.
Yeah.
Have you got a kind of time frame for when they might start? Or?
We only approved it on Tuesday.
No. But, he just
is it sometime next week?
Next week, yeah.
We've already started the process of coordinating how they need to be equipped, and we've already starting the process of the recruitment.
Great. And just the final question from me was, and it was picking up on the point that was both made at the committee and Vicky's made, is in terms of the whole labour force relevant to, I guess it's not, it's maintenance, but it's also gardening and there's a whole bunch of things I think that you've raised at the committee that in terms of just the ability to attract people into these different fields. Have we got a kind of discrete work program happening around things like the apprenticeships, internships, maybe scholarships, to kind of, just do a bit of labour force planning around that?
Our intention is to approach the LTP with options for that. We think that's the appropriate way to address it. Workforce retention is challenging at the moment because of Christchurch's construction environment. It doesn't mean we can't improve it, and that's really what we're going to bring to the LTP for consideration.
Right. And is there anything in the contracts that we have that requires sort of a number of internships or anything around the labour force, or is it?
Oh, we have quite a lot of requirements in the contract around skill base, training, development. The reality has been for the contractors that with the relatively consistent movement of workforce, particularly early on, it's a very difficult thing to achieve.
Thank you.
Very good. Anne?
Yes. just thinking about what you were talking about in terms of volunteers and the enormous benefit that brings, I'm wondering how we can encourage our young people to sort of partner and get involved with, for example, sponsoring a park, their local park, or doing something like that in terms of our growing that sense of citizenship. I'm not sure if that's the word we're using at the moment, but in terms of taking some responsibility and how we could develop that. Yesterday we went to some of the heritage sites, and Richie Moore got quite excited about the idea of young people taking some responsibility for heritage buildings in their community. And I just think there's a kind of a big picture thing that could happen here if we could get some kind of process through community boards, some sort of vehicle to engage young people in these things. What can you see that working?
We can, and the three ranges in the urban parks that we have now have had some success. They've only existed for just over a year, and working particularly with sports clubs that have a lot of children obviously associated to them, and having working bees and working days and helping. Trying to encourage people to give up and a big chunk of their life and make it a hobby is quite challenging. Encouraging people to get there by incremental contribution is really successful, and they've had great success to date. And we're going to develop a program where we can recruit, for want of a better phrase, even if it's just 3 times a year, like the giant cleanups. The impact of that is enormous in terms of obviously what you achieve, but the engagement that people have with their own spaces and places.
Well, I saw it out at South Shore that day with the Student Volunteer Army and other service groups coming out. They did something like 3 months' work in one morning.
Yes, no,
just because of the sheer numbers.
The other opportunity we have with young people is through our education team. They get great engagement through those environmental education programs, and it won't be hard to explore how we can bolt on a continuing relationship. Yeah.
All right. Sorry, just to finish, just wondering, they used to have science badges and things like that kids could earn. I wonder if a program like that, where kids could actually earn that sort of thing and become sort of, junior ranger or something like that, could be an idea.
Sure, I'll take that up with Kay's team.
It's a good idea. Yep. Right, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you very much, Andrew.